Hey everyone, how's it going? It's JDosX here, and in this week's episode of Mini Tut Monday, we're going to take a look at animatable Boolean operations. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, a Boolean operation is basically where you take one model and you cut a second model into it. As it turns out, if you modify this process slightly, you can actually animate this cut, and it makes some pretty awesome effects. I'm going to start out with a pretty basic sort of step-by-step instruction set, and then I'm going to show you 3 cool examples, and I'm going to add 3 extra tutorials in, which I will link in the description on how to make those extra examples. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to start out with a pretty basic standard model of a box, and we're going to try and cut a sphere into it. Now, if you were doing a regular Boolean operation, you just cut this into that and there you'd be done. But we want to animate this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a clone of this sphere, and you can do that quite easily by holding shift and dragging. Make sure when you clone that it's an instance. It has to be an instance. Basically, when it's an instance, it means that anything you do to this object will immediately affect this object as well. Now that that's done, we can take our original sphere and we can just drag it into our basic model. If I can actually get this right. There we go. So those two are intersecting now. We're going to do a subtraction Boolean operation, so we're going to go compound objects. I like to use pro Boolean, but it's up to you. You can use either Boolean or pro Boolean, doesn't really matter too much. What we're going to do is make sure subtraction is selected, and just go down into advanced options and make sure no edge removal is selected, because if you don't, you're going to have a bad day. So now that that's done, we can just pick our sphere, and as you can see, we've got a pretty cool cut made in there right now. And if you were doing a static Boolean operation, you'd be done, but we're not. We're going to make it more interesting. So if we go in to our sphere and we try to add a modifier to it, for example, we'll go with a ripple. Because it's an instance of this sphere which has been cut into here, when we ripple this, we'll see the ripple appear here. There we go. As you can see, the changes we're making to this sphere affect this here. And because this is an instance of that, you can change whatever you want, and any change you make will be affected in there. So as you can see, that's pretty cool, and as I said before, you can animate it. So let's try animating this ripple effect, and we'll do that by changing the phase. There we go, change it maybe to 10. So as you can see, we now have an animating Boolean operation, and that's pretty awesome. Let's say you want to move your cut. Notice how if you move the model, nothing at all happens. There's a cool trick around this. All you have to do is add an XForm modifier in. Now that we've added this XForm modifier in, if you open up the gizmo and simply move the gizmo, you'll see your cut moves around the model. And that adds in a whole heap of extra power. You can do pretty much anything you want now. There are heaps of different ways you can use this technique, and I've got 3 examples here for you. I'm going to do a tutorial on each of them, like I said before. The one I'm most excited about is this water demo, where you can actually use this to create some sort of really simple fluid dynamics. I've got a cup of water here, and I've got this water, sort of cement colored water right now in the middle, and using animated Boolean operations, I can actually make the water sort of bob up and down a little bit, as you can see there. And using a little bit of Y parameters along with this, I can actually make the water stay upright as you rotate the glass. And this is really cool, because if you wanted to create this effect normally, you'd use like fluid dynamics, which is cool, except it takes a lot of processing power, and 3ds Max doesn't have fluid dynamics without a plugin. So this is free. This looks pretty good, and you know, all you're doing is a glass of water. It's much faster to animate and render. I'll have this one's the one I'm most excited about. I'll have a fairly comprehensive tutorial for that one. We've got 2 more examples here. This one is where I use an intersection Boolean, and it creates, I'm not even sure what sort of effect this would be, but it's pretty cool. If you just have a look here, as you can see, all the shapes are sort of warping in and out of their locations, and it looks quite trippy. And there'll be a tutorial for that one as well. And for my last example, I just have a simple spinner here where this is the instance object, and as you can see, as the instance spins, then the cut also rotates. And you can also extend that as well to things like path deformation and whatnot. So thank you very much. Like I said before, links to those extra tutorials are in the description. Thank you very much, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Mini Tut Monday.